Mabuhay! My name is Fred Docdoso with Spotlight TV, and today we shine the spotlight on what some of our young Filipino professionals are doing to help our kababayans during this COVID pandemic. Here with me today is Leezel Tanglao. She is a board member and a COVID task force chair for FYLPRO, which is a Filipino Young Leaders Program. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Leezel.
Thank you for having me.
Nice, nice. So, FYLPRO, I actually had the honor of joining you and being selected last year, but can you explain to our audience here who and what FYLPRO is?
Yeah, so FYLPRO stands for the Filipino Young Leaders Program. It was established in 2012 under then Ambassador Quisha in conjunction with the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C. and the Ayala Foundation. And every year since 2012, the combination of both those two entities as well as FYLPRO, the nonprofit, has chosen roughly about 10 delegates to go back to the motherland and basically go through an immersion program. This year, unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we had to defer that. And we're hoping to restart it again when it's safe.
Sure. Now, again, you know, the global pandemic obviously had an adverse impact on the immersion trip, which is, like you mentioned, a big part of what FYLPRO does. How early on in COVID-19 pandemic did FYLPRO kind of recognize that and start to pivot and prepare for contingency plans?
Very early on, we started to recognize that COVID-19 was a big, massive impact into our community. When it became clear that we would be sheltering in place for a while, you know, we started asking ourselves, you know, the question like, how can we be together when we can't be together? So that led to a lot of Zoom calls, phone calls, chats, everything virtual to try to keep that modes of communication going. And in many of these conversations, we quickly found out that COVID-19 impacted everyone in every capacity. We started asking ourselves, well, how can we help our community? Especially for the Filipino community, as you know, a lot of us are on the front lines, not only on the medical side, as well as being essential workers, grocery, out there in the field, making sure that we have these essential services going on. And, you know, as part of our culture, it's so natural and it's in our DNA to care for other people. And we quickly realized, well, who is caring for us? Who's caring for our community? We really tried to figure out, well, how can we put our brains together and figure out what we can do to help our community, our fellow kababayans?
You know, that's awesome that FYLPRO did come up with a COVID task force because, like you mentioned, you know, we are the caretakers of our communities and we need to help our own too, right? Now, you talked a little bit about Filipino Americans, not just across the country, but you know, for us based here in Los Angeles, not everybody knows about the scale of the PhilAm community. Talk to us about some of the numbers, you know, with regards to just PhilAms in general and California, LA, you know.
According to the latest numbers, census numbers that we have available, there are 4 million Filipinos in the U.S. And of that, 500,000 are in the medical frontline fields. Of that, there's 520,000 are elderly. So that alone, put together in terms of sectors of our community that are vulnerable to COVID-19 is about 25%. And that's a huge number.
Right.
And for a lot of us, we live in a lot of intergenerational homes.
Yes.
So that has kind of compounded this impact that COVID-19 has had in our community with very fatal consequences. So in LA County alone, at least, you know, in the metropolitan area, there's a little over 500,000 Filipinos in this area alone. So that's already a significant number.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, you just brought up a couple of points that really hit close to home for me. You know, the intergenerational households, the folks that are in the medical field. I mean, literally, you know, my mom, my in-laws, my wife, my sister, aunts and cousins galore are all in the medical field. So shouts out to all of our heroes out there in the front lines. But kind of the flip side of that, like you mentioned, is that puts our community in general in greater risk, right? Not just by being in the front lines, but also the fact that we have so many that are in the elderly segment of the community. So folks, we're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more about Tayo Help Desk with FYLPRO.